And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Monday, September 15th, 2025. And to set things up as of this Monday late morning, low pressure here over the southwestern Gulf is just going to kind of sit and spin over the western areas of the Gulf as we go through Monday evening, night. There's going to be another, though, low, kind of a compact low, quickly pulling out of the North Pacific back across the eastern Gulf and then crossing between Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling on Wednesday. So we have at least a couple of more notable moderate to heavy rainfall events coming up here this week. Now, as of this Monday, we have moderate rain in areas of the Panhandle along the Gulf Coast with the first low. The second low on Tuesday as it comes northwestward will bring another round of moderate to heavier rain, especially from around Sitka on up through Yakutat as we head through late Tuesday night and especially during the day on Wednesday. It'll also be accompanied by some stronger, at least gale force winds. And then another system that's going to translate the energy out of the lower bearing Aleutians up into the Gulf at the end of the week, Friday into early Saturday, will also bring some additional moderate to heavy rainfall along the northeastern Gulf Coast and Panhandle on Friday. So keep that in mind. It's going to be an active pattern here along the Gulf Coast, especially areas from Cape Suckling on over to portions of the Panhandle. So Tuesday morning, we still have the one low sitting here with another one coming up like this. There's enough instability with a colder air aloft beneath this low. There could be a few low top thunderstorms with some lightning here over the northwestern Gulf. Further north, we have IFR conditions along the Beaufort Sea coast, and then back to the west, there's low pressure here in the lower bearing and a front. This system does have some turbulence and some moderate rain as it works its way eastward through the western central Aleutians. And then back here early Tuesday could be IFR conditions of southern and into central parts of the Panhandle. You can see by Tuesday afternoon with that low pulling back like this, there's an area of IFR working its way along the northeastern Gulf Coast, still an isolated low top thunderstorm possible over the western Gulf. We still have IFR conditions along the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline, especially from, say, Nuiqsut, Dead Horse through Kaktovik, and then back out here across the lower bearing eastern Aleutians. This low energy is sliding east-southeastward, and then it's going to recurve up into the Gulf here for the end of the week. So IFR conditions across the lower bearing and into the eastern Aleutians. For Wednesday morning, we have widespread IFR conditions along the Gulf Coast, the outer Panhandle up through outside of Hinchinbrook entrance. And again, some heavier rain is going to fall from Sitka on up toward Yakutat and Cape Suckling as we head through later Tuesday night and especially the first half of Wednesday. And on the other side of this second front that's going to kind of pivot back to the north and west, there could be a few low-topped thunderstorms with some lightning out over the eastern Gulf. In the far north, IFR conditions hold at Kaktovik with MVFR conditions along the Arctic coast. And then we see a blob of the IFR conditions lower Bering Sea into the central Aleutians. And for Wednesday afternoon, generally MVFR conditions along most of the Panhandle, maybe some IFR up toward the inner coastal mountains there with British Columbia. And we also find IFR conditions north slope and along the Arctic coast, especially Beaufort Sea coast, and a small pocket there out over the lower Bering and just to the into parts of the central Aleutians. So past conditions up there through the east central Brooks Range, Anatuvik, and Adigan passes MVFR to start in the early morning, giving way to VFR conditions. And then coming along the west arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Carmel, MVFR becoming VFR. Same thing, Rainy Pass, MVFR conditions early Tuesday becoming VFR. Generally, the further east you go, then on Tuesday, Windy Pass through Isabel Pass, Mentasta Pass, the air is going to be drier. Should have VFR conditions there on Tuesday. Coming back further south, there may be some MVFR conditions to start early in the morning there. Tanita Pass becoming VFR, but to the south of the pass, the mountains over the south of the pass will hold on to those MVFR conditions. And Portage Pass will start out with IFR conditions, especially the eastern half of the pass out into Prince William Sound. There's going to be some heftier rains moving into the west end of the Prince William Sound and Whittier for late Tuesday night and especially through at least Wednesday morning. But Portage should become MVFR midday to afternoon. And then Chilkoot and White will see IFR conditions in the far north holding on there on Tuesday. So looking at the freezing levels, surface and aloft, we do have temperatures overall below freezing, dipping down to the south slopes of the Brooks Range. You're also going to have at elevation some temperatures below freezing around the Alaska Range and up through Copper River Basin, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains, anywhere where you have some of that elevation and any type of clearing. So that's a given. Just can't resolve all those specific little spots. It'd be too clustered of a map. But we do have, as I said, low pressure. One sitting here, another one coming up from the North Pacific through the eastern Gulf, and then behind me we have energy from low pressure in a frontal system that's going to begin to slide east-southeastward. So ahead of that and along that front, freezing levels bump up early Tuesday here to 12,000 feet in the central Aleutians. And then looking at where we have thicker cloud cover and the clouds that are producing precipitation, we could find moderate icing over areas of the Panhandle, Eastern Gulf above 10,000 feet, above 8,000 feet into south central, where there may be some, especially there around Prince William Sound. And then further west with the low out here in the lower portion of the Bering, just north of the Aleutians. With that frontal system, there could be moderate icing above 10 and 12,000 feet across the lower Bering into the eastern Aleutians. At jet stream level, 30,000 feet, 300 millibars, we have a sharp trough that's actually a bit negatively tilted. And that's why they have this low coming up out of the North Pacific ahead of it. 130 knot jet max with southerly winds. And then on the backside, winds turn west-northwesterly, and across the Aleutians, we find a wind max of 115 knots south-southwest of the central Aleutians. At 9,000 feet, broad belt of winds anywhere from 40 to as high as 65 knots off of Haida Gwaii and well out over the eastern Gulf. Those are coming in from generally the south, slightly southeast. And here's that low circulation at mid-levels. That's 9,000 feet or 700 millibars behind me. We have a low circulation just to the northwest of the far western Aleutians with winds strong as 65 knots on the backside circulation, and then 40 to as high as 55 knots coming across the Aleutian chain. And then finally, 3,000 feet, we have the low circulation here. It's a rather compact low with winds of 50 to 60 knots either side of that circulation, and stronger winds just off of the outer Panhandle coastline in the eastern Gulf, ranging from 40 to locally as high as 60 knots south there of Yakutat Bay, and then extending back off the eastern Kenai, some 45 knot winds. And behind me, we clearly see a strong circulation around this low that's just north of the western Aleutians. At 3,000 feet, there's a 70 knot wind max there along the northern portion of that low circulation. And then, of course, translating this to the surface, we find widespread moderate turbulence across the Panhandle from Dixon Entrance all the way along, especially the outer coast here. There could even be some isolated areas of severe turbulence, and then that extends back along the Kenai Peninsula. Surface to 6,000 feet with some low-level wind shear because of this front that's going to be pulling back. And then behind me here, just extending down along the length of the Aleutians, we expect widespread moderate turbulence on Tuesday, surface to 4,000 feet.